This is a workshop on facility services. Dr. Pace, we're ready to begin.
Thank you, Chairman Soto and members of the board. We are excited this afternoon to bring you an update on our multiple construction projects. And we have our partners in the room to help. And we're going to start with Harmony and Shingle Schultz and Moss & Associates. Mr. Clinch and team.
Yes, please.
Sure. Patrick, you start.
So one of the first things we want to talk about for the middle school was kind of project goals and objectives, and this is the same thing we had presented last time, so it's really nothing new. But just to state, it's essentially a reuse of middle school CC. We had made some refinements, we made some upgrades based on working with facilities and working with the school board, but essentially it was based off of that prototype. We had worked out some bike path connections between the high school and the middle school. We had the additional practice field, and we kind of changed the architecture a little bit. So all that is still the same. The next thing we want to talk about was the status of the Army Corps permit. And we had mentioned this at the last school board workshop, and we've kind of come back and got some more information, some more backup as far as the two paths that we can go on. The first path, A, assumes purchase credits from the mitigation bank, as previously discussed, and that was looking at a construction start time of February of next year. The mitigation cost impact is higher in that range. That's more about $778,000 for the mitigation costs alone. And that includes federal requirements and state credits with the purchase also.
That was January before.
Yes. And
now it's February?
Yeah, the longer we kind of delay the selection of the process, it's going to continue to push out.
That's why we're making a recommendation tonight,
Okay.
so we can move forward. The plan is still to go to GMP in January, so they can start mobilizing. They can start with their submittals, get all those balls rolling. And when we finally do get all the permits in place, they can then start all the site work for the project.
Correct.
The Path A, as Patrick was saying, centers on using an existing state credit bank. Right. So we are hoping that we might be able to get a little bit better, a break on the rates for that. That was not the case. The Army Corps did give us a break on their rates for the federal credits, so that was good news. That saved us a little bit there. The other good news is in the Path B, our 100 acres from the Quad Party Agreement. We were afraid that we might only get a very small number of credits for that because it's mostly wetlands. And so we thought we would get somewhere in the range of 3 credits, and then it was going to be marginal in value. Well, our consultants working with South Florida, we ended up getting 4.7, so it was much better than we'd feared, and it made it much more attractive to go that route. So and plus the A.J. Gallagher road improvements that were also on the hook for the county. There's a provision in the agreement that if any mitigation that's beyond what we can get from that 100 acres, we can offset that cost, and we can avoid having to pay the county for that $373,000.
Okay.
And that's some of the due diligence that we promised that we would do at the last workshop, which included going back to the Harmony developer to ensure that all the provisions of the quad agreement would transfer over. And we have confirmed that they will. So that's good news that we will will be able to take that 373 offset to lower our overall liability.
Does that come off of the 408 in Plan B and add to the 778 in Plan A? The 373 road cost?
Yes, and so you see on the bottom there, we actually would have to add another 373 to the...
And we reduced the 408 by 373?
It's 373 that we don't have to reimburse the county per the quad agreement.
It's not a credit back, but it's a cost.
No, so that 408 becomes
go to the next slide.
$33,000 or something.
Yeah, so it's a savings of $743,000.
It sounds like it's more than that to me. Go back. If we do the 7 cent Plan A, we've got to pay the 373 to do the road, right?
Yes.
So that's really $1 million something.
Correct.
Right.
And if we do the other one, by the time it's netted out, it's really only 27 and 8, $35,000. So that's over $1 million difference in my mind.
Yeah, it's two different entities that we're working with. It's not the one check that we're
Well,
struggling.
it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's still
But in the final analysis, you're absolutely correct. As far as our pocketbook goes, it's a
It's a $1 million
It's basically
difference.
$1 million decision.
So,
And they,
what's the participation from the developer? Is there a participation? Is the
The Harmony development has just been sold. Sunterra is the new
Okay,
owner.
okay.
So we had to go back to Sunterra to confirm that all the provisions of the quad agreement would stand. And we were. We worked with our legal counsel to confirm that as well.
So does this information, what's being presented, represent their contribution also?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Because we're able to take the 100-acre wetland
Right.
mitigation within that quad agreement.
No, I understand, that's why that was not.
Can we go back one slide real quick? So just in my very simplistic terms, the difference, the 30-day delay, which is not even 38 days since it's February, the 28-day delay to February 21st to March 21st saves us $1 million.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
yeah,
Now, and again, this is contingent on the review times.
Yep.
We're dealing with two entities. The South Florida Water Management District, which can take up to 30 days, and then the Army Corps of Engineers.
Can we be doing any of these simultaneously?
Now, we have to do the South Florida Water Management District piece first as the prerequisite for the Army Corps to sign off on the permit.
but we've already done the negotiations with the Army Corps. We've already gotten a reduction in their mitigation costs. So that'll all
So
be
that's
ready
a
to
fait
go.
accompli once we
Yeah,
get there.
Exactly, but we have to do the South Florida step first.
I mean, can we start, is that not started yet, or is it? The South Florida?
We're working on the management plan right now.
Yeah,
Now,
the management plan is being developed by our environmental engineer, and they
here?
will then,
our civil engineer.
our civil engineer is, who,
They're working
the
for
environmental
them.
engineer works under Osceola Engineering. So they're working on that management plan now,
What is their timeframe?
10 days. And that was as of last week, John? 10 days?
Everything by December 1st. Management plan and acquisition of the parcel.
And if we do that, we should get a response soon after the first of the year, pretty quickly?
30 days, 30 days of that. That's expected to have it complete.
Got it.
Maybe before the first of the year.
And we don't foresee any issues with that.
Well, what we've asked the consultant to do is to go hand walk that to the South Florida Management District, walk them through that management plan to avoid any comments, or if there are review comments, that those can be addressed immediately.
So I think I hear we have board consensus, obviously, to go with Plan B.
Yes.
It may put a little bit more pressure on our timeline, but we're absolutely confident that Moss is
$1
ready
million
to
bucks
do
is $1
it.
million bucks.
Right.
Is there anything they can start doing? I know it's different from,
Well, once we get the South Florida approval, the permit in place, they can do all the grubbing, they can do all the work in the uplands. Unfortunately, the main building
It's in the
sits
middle of the pond.
in the woodland area. So
So-
we really do need that piece, but there is quite a bit of work they can do. Obviously, the mobilization can take place, we can clear the
Very
site.
similar to the high school site, we had a Phase 2 area that was Army Corps. We could not get into that area until we received our permit. Fortunately, all the buildings were in the South Florida Water Management District area. Not the case with this project. Those buildings are in those Army Corps areas. But they can get in and mobilize to start excavation of retention ponds and that type of thing.
And there's submittals and other things that can be ongoing too prior to actually digging out there. So those are things we can be doing with the construction process.
Are we doing this?
yeah, we need to make, I guess that was kind of where I was going. Are we doing everything we can so the day that the Army Corps says, here it is, after South Florida?
I think that the rest of the presentation will address that, will speak to that.
This is just showing the similar slide from last month. We did have a stakeholder meeting that involved all the stakeholders with curriculum, facilities, maintenance, everybody on board to kind of go through and make sure we're all in agreement as far as any value engineering items. And essentially, at the end of the day, we did not delete any program from the school at all.
So we actually did the VE piece before we bid the project out. So that's something, a lesson learned from FFF, Hochelaga High School. We ended up bidding the job out and we're $4 million over. And then we had to VE after the fact, much more difficult to do.
So we're being much more proactive this time. We've worked
that's
through that value
being done.
engineering exercise. We now have a GMP that is within our project budget parameters. Of course, we will continue to pursue value engineering and other cost-saving opportunities.
Remind me of the new parameters again?
33 million for construction.
That's what I thought it was. That's what.
Yes, sir.
Just kind of an update on the GMP and the project status. We did take the bids on the 12th, and we've been meeting with the subcontractors. We put together very detailed scope packages for them. We received the bids, we reviewed the bids, and we've actually gone through those and brought some of the major trade subcontractors in. I think at the last presentation, we had indicated that we had gotten very good bid coverage. I think we went back and we confirmed the tally, but we sent it out to about 700, over 700 subcontractors. We ended up getting about 215 bids in, which is very good. I think that's attributed to the 2 outreach programs that we did, getting subcontractors engaged, making phone calls to them. And I think one of the benefits is a lot of the subcontractors either have worked with you guys or have heard that Osceola County Schools is very good with their payment and their processes, and so subcontractors want to work for you. So that's the good news.
But she's being a little too modest. We just bid out 2 other smaller jobs and got minimal coverage.
Be more interested in 33, share of 33 million.
It was excellent coverage, and that will equate to more competitive pricing in our GMP.
And I was actually going to come to that. So yes, the good news is we are under the budgets that we had presented at the DD and CD stage, and I think that's attributed to.
How much under?
Well, staff is still reviewing it.
We're
so
just under.
We just submitted it.
If you get more under, it's okay.
We've got some work to do.
We actually have some cost savings ideas as well that some of the subcontractors have presented that we have not presented yet to staff that we can definitely present to them. I would also like to say that the contract drawings were very good, so I think that helped attribute to getting some good sub coverage and sub numbers. We right now are tracking probably 20 to 25% potentially for local participation for Osceola County subs, and I think there's opportunity to grow and additional impact to that with hiring local subs.
You know, local subs are great, but
Yes,
if they, number one, if they've got the workload where they can perform to the standard that we need and on that schedule, and number 2, without paying a premium for it also. I mean, we love local, but we've got budgets, we've got standards, and that kind
Yes,
of
sir.
first.
Sherry, what'd you say the percentage was, 20-something?
About 20 to 25 of the total contract.
How does
amount.
that compare with Tupper Light, and is that kind of in the ballpark?
It is.
Okay. I don't care what the difference is, just ballpark.
And we kind of wraps things up for where we are with Harmony Middle School.
August 2019, right?
Absolutely.
I like absolutely.
June 2019.
Well, I just want to make sure when school starts,
There is
it's
no
ready.
plan
That's all I'm
B
asking.
for kids in seats.
Yeah.
So the plan is to turn the current Harmony Community School into a K-5 and then merge the middle school.
Yes. So you'll see that GMP come to the board meeting in December.
Okay.
So there's nothing, I just want to make sure that we're not going to come back in a couple of weeks, a month, have another workshop and be waiting, you're going to be waiting on us to make another decision. Is there anything else that we need to make for you to get you rolling on this? Right
No,
now?
just, we will be bringing the GMP forward at the next board meeting.
Okay.
That'll be it.
Okay, Michigan Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While we're
Right.
switching, thank y'all for having the deck.
We'll ask Song and Associates and Clancy and Faze to
I
join us at the
like it.
table.
I like it.
I like to be able to flip back and forth.
I mean, I can do it now, but if you're getting it, I'll take it. It helps.
Has hockey season started yet?
Yeah, it's busy, all over the
John,
place.
go ahead and take it away.
Okay, well, good afternoon, thanks for having us. We'll bring you up to date on Michigan Avenue.
So,
There it is.
If you want to drive, you
Okay. So we're going to cover the project goals and objectives, the status of the permitting, stakeholders' input, summary of the pre-construction services, the plan for outreach, the schedule, and then we'll answer your questions.
Excuse me, before you get started, I got a question for Dr. Pace. Dr. Pace and Mr. Kruppenbacher, based on the letter last week from the Department of Education regarding the expenditure of funds for construction, projects. That does not have a negative impact on anything we're being presented today, does it?
We have not gotten a response yet, so we're moving forward, just as the board has said for us to do.
Thank you.
And waiting on a response from the Department of
So
Education.
regardless of the response, we're moving forward.
Until the board tells us no.
Okay, thank you.
I can tell you right now, Deborah and I have had some long talks about been evaluating risks, and this may be one of those times where you plant your feet and say, we're doing what we think.
Mine are planted.
Oh, yeah.
Speak for the other
Right.
board.
So we're going through everything to make sure we can clearly tell you, here's everything. and
I would
here's
like
what-
that, yes.
We have a defensive
Well,
position.
I mean, I'm
Or
firm, but I
if
can
we
be
go-
moved.
All right. Project goals, I think you're familiar with these in general, 946 student stations, shared dining with St. Cloud Middle School, shared central chiller plant that can be expanded by dropping in additional chiller capacity. That building, the dining building, has community use potential. And then we have an ESC program, 2 VPKs, 6 standard research, 3 skills labs, 1 which is STEM related, and it's about 18.5 acres of site development, and construction is scheduled to start in January of 2018.
If I could just interrupt really quickly, remember that one of our goals was to have VPK in every one of our elementary school sites. This year, we're in all but 2, Michigan Avenue being 1 because of the space constraints. So this would allow us to work toward that strategic plan goal for early literacy.
What we just have, do you mind, Mr. President? If we have just a sidebar for like 1 minute, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Have a sidebar.
You know, I had some discussions with the Early Learning Coalition, and one of the things that they're deathly afraid of is if we were to do some sort of daycare for our teachers, that we would have infant care, actually maybe birth to school age. Is that, would that ever be a possibility that you could see? And you don't have to answer now, we don't have to get into it. Is that a possibility as an incentive to be a teacher that you've explored?
We absolutely have explored it pretty
Okay.
aggressively. We
Okay.
looked at our Zenith site and COPE, the COPE program, and potentially using some of that same staff because our COPE program
I
has
meant
gotten
at the
relatively
school
small.
for like teachers at Michigan Avenue.
Could we do it at every school? Probably not,
Yeah.
because of number one, the space constraints.
Sure,
Obviously,
sure.
our capital needs are great, but also because there is quite a pretty extensive staffing requirement that goes along with that. But we are looking at, could we do some regional sites?
Even if there was a cost involved. I mean,
Yeah.
I would think that an employee would pay that cost if they knew that their baby was on site.
Well, they would have to pay. I mean, it couldn't be a free
Yeah.
service for our employees, but we do think that there is some potential benefit for that, and so it is something that we're certainly looking at. We thought we would start small with one site and then try to expand.
To Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Booth's point, though, I mean, if you're going to do something like that, it makes sense to do it like with Den, Michigan Avenue Elementary, Harmony Middle School, et cetera, at this point versus once it's built out, then figure out where you're going to do it and how you're going to do it.
Yeah, remember with our COFTI restraints already,
Yeah.
that's a significant challenge for us to take
I'm not
buildings
asking
that are
for it, I'm not
designed for
even
student
asking for a plan.
capacity
I was just
and
asking
convert
No,
them
no, I'm
into.
not,
right.
I'm not saying, I'm
Yeah.
saying, no, that's not what I'm saying. Right now, all these, I'm using these hypothetically, these projects are in different phases of design. They may be too far along, to your point, but as we look at the next project, whatever it may be, you know, it's easier to configure it on the front end than on the back end.
What about a P3 or something, or?
And that's what I was gonna say, for
Where they come in
P3
and somebody makes a long-term commitment to build a little
Yeah,
space.
yeah,
Right.
correct.
And they get to run it.
And oftentimes, to
20
get a
years or
P3
whatever.
model to work, it has to have some type of revenue generator, so that would,
Yep.
you know, potentially
Absolutely.
be a revenue
Oh,
generator.
I don't want to get off on that, I just wanted to ask that question, so
And
thank you
for
for
this
indulging me.
particular
Great
project,
idea.
we are being very careful to stay within our cost per
Yes.
student
On
station.
this one,
Private
let's
sector
stay.
do it.
So that we can ensure that we have the
This is very
protection of
tight.
Florida statute 1013.
Getting back to Michigan Avenue
264.
Elementary, John, you mentioned that you got an 18.5 acre site. Are we using existing retention that's there now? Do we have to?
No, we've had to
Retention.
create new retention.
We're bringing the site up to the new standards. Back
So-
in the day, retention wasn't required. Now
So
about
out of the 18.5
30% of the
acres, how
site
many
is.
acres are we going to use?
For retention?
No, how many, or retention or we're going to net out to
Okay.
use? Either way, either way.
John, do you have a rough 2 acres for retention?
So we got 16.5, so we have 16.5 acres we can use.
Two
Thank
additional.
you. Thank you.
Before we,
Right.
if I may, just hold on just a
Additional?
moment, before we
Sure.
go into
Two
permitting, I
additional.
want to go back to the project goals.
Okay.
Just one slide back. If I-
Sure.
All right, so
So this is what we envision for this elementary school. 946 students.
Okay, I'm sorry.
How does that compare with what we have right now in our schools?
Our current elementary prototype is 948.
Okay,
And that's what
so-
we're trying to build to, is to that prototype size.
Oh, okay, good.
What does DOE say this number should be if I...
694.
694.
694.
But we're good with the 948, that number. That's what we have with the other schools.
Yes,
Is
based
it
on
going
our
to be that way
enrollment
for every
projections.
new elementary school that we attempt to build, that they're going to say, no, it should only be a 620, there's a different in
The
each
challenge,
area?
the challenge that we have is the state, like all of the other districts, they look at our district as one entity. So they look at us as a homogeneous massing. So they look at the total number of seats we have and the total number of full-time equivalents that we have to fill those seats. Regardless of, you may have an area over here that has some available space, but you have areas over here that are overcrowded. They don't care. They expect you to redistrict, rezone, portables, whatever, but the last resort is building more sites. If you have any additional seats anywhere in your district, that's the way they look at it. So that's why they do the COFD plus 2 classrooms, and they cap it at that. It used to be they would look at your 5-year projections, and they said, well, if you're growing, they would say, yes, we agree that you need to build to your 5-year projection. And that's what we've done for many years. Now it's...
The rules have changed this year.
Is that what it, okay? All right. The 3 ASD ESC classrooms, is that what,
Standard.
3 ESC resource, what is that? Is that different from?
That's a pull-out, small instruction space, and it is standard to their program.
And it helps to build in flexibility.
3 skills labs, 1 is STEM related.
Right. Again, that's district program.
Okay.
I got some of the goals also.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Board, on this?
I do. Project goals, you've got construction start date January 18th. What's the construction end date?
August of 19?
Yes.
It's phased, well,
2 phases.
It's multi-phased.
Okay.
August of 2019, it'll be, the main schools will be completed. Over that summer period leading up to August, we'll be renovating building 3 and demoing the old school.
I think that should be the project goals.
Are there options, Superintendent? I know we may not want to play our hand. Are we exploring some options that would, maybe a Bellalago model or something like that for part of the seats? You understand what I'm saying?
I do. We haven't looked at like a BF or whatever that's.
EFBD.
EFBD. I can't get the letter straight. For this particular project, as you know, one of the frustrations is if we called it a charter school, we could build it anywhere as we wanted and build it as big or as small as we wanted, but that's not the case here. In the meantime, we're moving forward with the large-scale plans because we are at 100% build-out of our design drawings. But at the same time, there are some spaces where if we decided not to build out a few classrooms, we could get to that 694 number. But we don't want to play that card yet because we truly need the seats.
No,
when you look at the
we all know
growth
that.
in that area of the county, you look at the capacity that we're already experiencing at Hickory Tree, St. Cloud Elementary School, Michigan Avenue, Harmony Community, Narcoossee Elementary School, we need these seats. So that's what we're going to continue to advocate for at this point, but we are looking at where there's some flexibility within the design that we wouldn't necessarily build out all of the spaces, or perhaps we wouldn't do the renovation on that last building like we want and need to do, the newer one that we're not going to destroy, and so that we could comply with those agreements. Okay?
Move on to the plan.
I'm sorry.
No problem. The status of permitting. The South Florida Water Management District has, information has been submitted, and I believe comments were received on 10/24, and John, you're responding to those, right?
We responded. There were 4 minor comments.
Okay.
We responded about 10 days ago.
Okay, so those were very routine.
Very routine.
City of St. Cloud submitted to them, comments received on 10/27.
DRC meeting was held last week. Mark Lockard was there with John Ford from our office. No issues.
Okay.
We're responding to
Yeah,
those
the
now.
city's been
We'll get that turned back.
working with us very well. They're anxious to have this project go forward.
I bet they are.
Why wouldn't it be?
And then Osceola County, the county submitted on It's been submitted, comments were received on 10/26.
Yes, we scaled back the scale of the off-site roadway improvements with the help of the traffic engineer.
Okay.
As a cost savings measure. So we revised the plan, we're going to turn back into the county. The county didn't have any big comments anyway.
Okay.
Their only comment they really had was kind of an on-site comment concerning the driveway connection, which we made that change and reflected in our plan.
Right. And then the FDEP water and sewer permits.
Those got turned into the city for signature today, and they sign off on those. We submit those electronically to FDEP, and they're issued within a week at most.
Okay. So all those appear to be on course.
Clean site.
That's good, since it's an existing site.
Then the status
already school there.
Status of the drawings, bid documents will actually be posted tomorrow. Our CM's going to be ready to jump into that. The conform documents that pick up any addenda or any additional comments will be completed on 12/15. The building permit 12/16, and the South Florida Water Management District permit will be well before 12/15/17.
Good.
In terms of the process, we've...
No, I was going to go off track again, so please.
In terms of the process, there's been in-depth user input with 7 intensive user workshops, one of which was a VE workshop occurring prior to GMP so that we could get the VE input well ahead of that time. And you can see the list of all the different entities.
Give me two examples of things that we value engineer.
One thing was, I'll let you continue, but one thing was we found a way to use the site more efficiently, so we eliminated about 3 acres of site that we did not have to develop with no loss of program.
And then we looked at, so we had on this particular project, we were, instead of just using a plain tilt wall building, we were actually using a thin brick veneer on it. So we went back and reevaluated whether the need was there for the thin brick and determined the fact that the, building 3 that's going to remain is going to be kind of tucked in behind everything. So this building could stand on its own.
Purpose of the thin brick is to blend it in with the other building that you can't see from.
And it really
So the material is durable,
yes.
just as
It's
durable?
sure, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Is one more energy efficient than the other?
No.
No. It's just basically a facade.
It's aesthetics. And the tot lot, we re-engineered the tot lot a little bit to save some money.
Yep, absolutely.
So the 3 additional acres that aren't being developed, are we being sold?
Oh, yes, it's still part of
It's still part of the
site.
overall
Okay.
project. We're just not developing.
No, I understand,
regrading it.
okay, thank you.
But we had a matrix of, 15 or so.
Yeah, our overall matrix was probably about 25, 30 items total. They got pared down to probably about 15 items that were acceptable solutions that got implemented into the
And a
drawings.
cool roof is automatically part of the project.
Yes, that's part of our design standard.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
And this basically is the site configuration that you've seen, I think, a couple of times before. With building 1 there to the bottom, that's the new classroom building. Building 2, which is the shared dining multipurpose building, and then building 3 to the right, which is the renovation of the existing 1980s vintage 1-story building.
And it looks like an awful lot of parking, but on the conga line, the first 3 rows are grass parking. That's something that the city of St. Cloud wasn't thrilled about, but they were willing to let us go ahead with that plan.
And those will be stabilized parking areas, so that for evening events where we require overflow parking.
Is there good drainage? Are we going to have better drainage there?
And it also
It'll all be regraded,
keeps
yes.
it as a
That whole area there, is basically a bog hole.
Yeah,
50
you
years ago,
really
right,
don't.
when it was donated.
We're gonna have to put our fish in
You really don't have an engineered site right now.
Well, I know both my children both my daughters go to St. Cloud Middle School. And the only reason I bring this up is because when we came in August for open house, it was wet, and the whole grassy front area was wet. I'm fine with grass parking, I don't mind, as long as we're gonna have a better drainage on that front end, because that's about where we were parking, right?
You'll see there's a large retention pond right there, so everything will be
Okay.
built up to
Elevations have
grade.
been raised to get it, so
It's
it's
being
not.
engineered really for the first time now.
Thank you.
With this project, basically, to correct drainage.
I don't mind getting my feet wet, but other mamas do, and they tell me
Well, sure,
about
you
it.
know, they've got to put
We'll
issues
tell you about
on.
it.
Yeah, sure.
They will tell you about it.
And we'll turn it over to our CM.
All right, so we've been working on our outreach program. We've actually been advertising and we sent out direct solicitations. We actually are holding a outreach program actually on Thursday over at the exhibition hall from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. So we're going to be doing that first. That's going to be the first actually in-person outreach program. Like I said, we've probably sent out about 500 direct solicitations already. We're actually prepared to actually start the advertisements for the GMP process. The first advertisement goes out this Sunday, then the following one the following Sunday to meet the state requirements as far as the advertisement process goes. So those are already set in plan and in motion. So we're moving forward. We're looking to get our GMP pricing back on December the 14th from our subcontractors. Quickly return that around to a GMP to submit to staff and for review. Get that hopefully negotiated so we can get it approved in the January board meeting for start in basically in the January.
Dr. Pace, have we, Mr. Thacker, if you don't mind.
No.
Have we decided to add bull riding to the curriculum?
You started at elementary.
That's why
They're little girls.
Right there.
Starting now.
Please.
It's a new gym curriculum.
So, and, you know, again, our CM understands how important it is to have the outreach so that we can have lots of bidders, lots of interest on this project, because it is a very hot market out there now. We've had, as Mark mentioned, other projects where we didn't get good coverage. So a project as large as this, Clancy understands how important it is to have good coverage. And also, we've sequenced the bidding schedule around the holidays, so that we're receiving our bids before the holidays.
I got a question on the outreach programs. This is the second group here, 2 out of 2 that have talked about outreach programs. And my guess is we may hear that a third time here. And you've had problems with smaller projects. Does it make, and this may be totally stupid, and I'm fine if it is there any logic or sense to having the district do the outreach programs and have all the participants there, or the contractors there? I'm thinking about if I'm a plumber, I have to go to 9 of these things, or can I go 1 or 2 times and be exposed to every, they could be in different rooms, or so, I know that
We can have a trade fair with the foundation or
there's
something.
some way to do it
like that.
to make it easier.
It's a good point. I think there's a lot to be said about that. So, as you mentioned, subcontractors, they'll come to the events. However, when you have multiple events over and over and over, you're going to lose participation.
It's starting to
because-
come, I've already been, but, well, they hadn't been to yours.
Exactly,
They
but
hadn't been to whoever's next.
they look at it and go, I've been to 3 others, I'm not coming to this particular
Sure.
one. So where if you join the whole
I
process
mean, I don't know how
together, I think it makes a
competitive
lot of
that kind of
sense.
is among you guys.
It really, to me, again, you're involving all of us in
Yeah,
the
the district can
process,
almost
so it
manage
allows
it,
them to
make it
come
sponsored.
from like a trade show kind of situation and see the
Yes, that
opportunity
was
that
my
exists.
point.
So I don't think it really presents any.
But the nice thing about this particular approach is it hones in on this particular project, so they can see what's advantageous for their firm, if it's a good fit.
Well, that's why I break them up. You might have to do the same
They
with
can clearly
all 3
understand the
different times or
schedule,
something, if there's
so
3 of you
they know,
there.
if they have to rush, or if they have plenty of time to put their teams in place. So it's good to have a focused.
Yes, absolutely. A little bit about, as you heard, we did go through a value engineering process to, early in the process to get that implemented in the design instead of trying to do it after the fact. So that has actually has occurred. We've confirmed through the 90% set of documents that those suggestions have been implemented into the documents. So we feel good about where we're heading in that regard. I will say one thing too. The fact that you guys are bidding these at this particular time is also a very good thing. You're doing it out of the normal sequence of normal school process bidding. Normally they're bidding, in the early fall where where a lot more opportunity, or spring, I'm sorry, where there's a lot more opportunities out there where the subs are probably not as aggressive. Right now, they're aggressive and they're looking for opportunity. So again, I think it's a great opportunity that you put it out at this particular time. As far as our schedule, we've been working on a early release or early GMP process to allow us to relocate the cover play area and the basketball area. So when we get ready to start, we actually can hit the ground running. We're actually submitting that GMP tomorrow. We got notification today that it needs to be in tomorrow. We were thinking it was next week, but we're scrambling right now to get that all pulled together, and we'll have it submitted tomorrow so that we can get that. It's not going to be a very big one, but we'll get that together so we can get that.
And the
approved.
idea is when we first start work, the initial plan was that the school is basically just going to have to do without those amenities, for a period of time. And we, in some cases, we're actually having to do some temporary work and then undo it later for the permanent work. And we, that's one of the advantages of bringing the team on board early when they get the chance to work with the architect team. And they can say, wait a minute, if we do that early, we can do the finished product first. And we're done. And the school gets to use it the whole time. Kind of makes sense. Cool.
So that's happening now, and now those activities, our plan is to try to do a lot of that through the holiday while they're off for break, and try to get most of those things done. The one thing that probably won't be done is the erection of the actual covered structure over the covered play area. The concrete will get placed so that when they come back, they'll be able to use that area back there. However, the structure itself won't be there just because the building won't be here in time. And as soon as it comes, we'll coordinate with the school to be able to shut that area down for a couple of weeks to get the building erected on it and completed. And then the next phase is, and I'm sorry, these are kind of out of order. We didn't realize until we were getting here that we have the phase 1A on the right-hand side instead of the left-hand side. But phase 1B is really the next main component, which is the main construction of the new building. And that really will go from the January of 18. It says December, but really it actually goes out until basically the early spring and before we'll actually be finishing that. However, in December, if there becomes an opportunity to look at building 3, we would, but I don't believe it will. We don't think that that will happen until over the summer period, that summer, which is the final phase, phase 2. That'll actually occur during the summer break when they actually leave for summer. That's when we'll start that renovation. We'll also start the demolition of the old
Talking
school.
summer 18, right?
Yeah, summer of 18.
Okay, pause for just, and that's the renovation that we would possibly not do to comply with
The 694, the lesser student stations.
Worst case, we just leave it the way it is with some minor improvements. We still would do the roof and some
Minor interior things that need to be fixed.
fire alarm, that sort of thing, that you have to tie the whole school together.
Would you all mind coming up with a cost estimate of doing it now under this program? And what it would cost later when we really need the seats, which we know we're going to need at this point in time? Would you mind doing that cost analysis? And it doesn't have to be really, really in-depth, but something.
We have those costs broken out. We just have to have the escalation out for,
And
say,
the cost of
3
general
years when
conditions
we
or
think
something.
we would have.
Well, you're gonna have a remobilization cost.
Yeah, added general
Exactly.
conditions.
General
To
conditions.
capture that, so I'm armed with that.
And
number. So we're all armed with
Yeah.
that.
And
number.
escalation, absolutely.
Well, and the other number that I think we cannot forget, which we'll talk about tonight at the board meeting, is that we have added 2 elementary schools worth of students in the last 4
But the
weeks.
state won't count those for 2
But that
years.
doesn't count,
2%
yeah.
over our enrollment that was beyond our projection. And we were already over enrollment at our October FTE window.
We're only gonna grow by 3,000 students in 10 years, so that can't be correct.
Well, the state won't even update that for 2 more years.
Not to get us off.
So with that, I mean, that's the schedule as we've outlined it at this
I
point.
want to back up on something Mr. Booth said.
Sure.
What is your annual escalation rate you're going to use? 3%, 6%, 4%?
Right now, I would say it's about a 3% increase right now over the course of last year. Prior to that, it was actually going more like about a 6 to 8% increase.
Well, then I use 3.5%.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
we can certainly factor that however we choose that we think is necessary, but the escalation has actually dropped a little bit just due
Well,
to the
drop
fact
it a
that.
little bit is going from 6 to 5. Drop it a lot is going to 6 to 7.
Sure.
Materials have gotten cheaper, labor's gotten less cheap.
Right.
Right, right.
Yep.
Skilled labor's gotten less skilled.
You know the story.
Yeah, there's.
You know the story they want to tell.
There's a big shortage of skills. Okay.
I want to tell the truth. That's always pretty easy.
And I don't, John, I'm not sure if this was a
just kind of wrap up.
Well, basically, just to wrap up, we are on schedule, and August 1st, 2019, that's the magic date.
Thank you.
To complete everything, and we'll turn it over to you for your questions.
When Song signed up to take this project on, we knew up front, they knew up front, we had a very aggressive schedule on the design side of
They
this.
know we had an aggressive DOE.
Okay.
My question is actually for you again, Dr. Pace, and this is what I was going to say earlier, and I didn't want to get us off track until this point, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to just bring this up again. I talked about the charter thing. Is there any other options, and maybe Mr. Krumperbacher, and I know there's a lot of different ways that money gets moved around and how money is used. Is there an option to say the city builds one of these, but somehow we fund it some other way, or that the Education Foundation owns or builds one of these buildings or renovates it? But you understand what I'm saying? Are we exploring all those kind of different things to
And
get
that is
around?
something that we may have to seriously look at with the demonstration high school. You know, we certainly have everything budgeted and we're moving forward just like we've been planning on the plans for that project, but that may be one where we have to get creative.
Yeah, absolutely.
We
And
are,
maybe-
Ricky,
Oh, sorry.
we are looking at every conceivable
Okay.
option to be able to maximize the community resources, developer resource, everything, as options to get the stuff done. And so there are potential options out there that we're working through.
Okay, great.
Thanks, guys.
Maybe we'll just
very
become the
much.
largest charter.
All right, Den John Middle School, we'll bring our architect, CT Shoe, Mr. George Thomas.
Afternoon.
So this is a project that just recently went into the design phase. The design award was approved at the last board meeting. So CT Shoe has been on the job for a very short time, but they will provide us an update where they've gone in this short time.
Everybody's familiar with the Den John Middle School site? Okay. So we're obviously keeping the existing school in operation, building the new, and then we'll tear down the existing and build basically parking and bus loop on top of it. That's a general plan. Project goals, this would be a standard student station 1408 middle school for Osceola County. It'll be occupied during construction. We are looking at, the new would all be the administrative, media center, kitchen, all the classrooms, labs, and associated spaces. That building one, the big building up front, pretty much has all the cafeteria, media center, all the classrooms. So that would be all new. There's 3 buildings, larger buildings, buildings 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is the gym. Kind of 2 and 3 are one building together. But we'd be renovating those buildings and looking closer at the gymnasium in terms of what kind of upgrades to the flooring and some of the finish work that's in that gym. Now, that gym was done as a joint use project with the city, so there's actually a contract in place for community use on that during that
Is the city
summer.
going to contribute any of the construction dollars, do we know?
They are. They are going to be participating in the new traffic signal, a new time of use signal.
Participating or doing it?
They're a 50% cost sharing.
50%.
What about are they funding any of the gym
Well, they
improvements?
funded the previous improvements when the locker rooms were added to the gymnasium and some other upgrades to the fields and the gymnasium as well.
Have we asked to see if they contribute towards this? Where's lab does this go?
We certainly can.
I would encourage that.
Yes, sir.
When were those improvements made?
5-6 years ago?
Yeah, the gym was built in 2005, I believe. And, yeah, so then there were finish upgrades done just a few years back, maybe.
Yeah.
Does
5
the,
years.
Very
does the joint use agreement end, or does it continue? Meaning, if the city uses it under a joint use and it ends, in my opinion, there's some value to them investing to get another joint use agreement and to help versus if it continues, then just from a bargaining standpoint, I think you have
That's an excellent point. We'll research that. Thank you.
On the site side, we'll have upgraded storm sewer and gas, electrical, new central plant, new main service yard area for deliveries to the kitchen. And we were looking at the traffic light across the street as the aquatic center. We know the elementary school accesses through the middle school to get to the aquatic center, so we'll be accommodating that. We've actually had our first meeting with the city on the traffic light, and the original concept was it might have a four-arm mast system there, but the city felt that we could get by with two diagonals, so that would cut the whole improvement cost in half. So that was a good way to start out with the city.
And that will become the new car loop. Today, as you know, at Den John, there really isn't our car loop to speak of.
It's Den John.
It's Den John.
Yeah, I know where the car is. My
And last but not least, this is currently not an EHPA, and I know
we're confirming with the emergency management that it does not have to be an EHPA.
If we were replacing the gym entirely, then we would look at it for potential EHPA, but since we're only potentially going to be adding additional locker rooms, making some minor modifications to it, that doesn't apply.
The renovations and remodeling that's going to happen in the gym, I mean,
There'll be
are they the
minimal.
things that we already did 4 to 5 years ago, or is this is
We'll add to
additional
it.
things?
We'll
You're
add to
adding
it.
to, okay.
currently there are very small locker rooms and no showers, and the bathrooms aren't even connected to the locker rooms. So what we're looking at doing is doing a full set of middle school locker room, bathroom, showers, coach's office, storage, off the back of the gym.
Yes.
So it's convenient to the play fields and convenient to the gym.
That's right.
Our permit status at this point, we've identified where we're going to go. Obviously, it'll be a few months before we do that. At the end of schematics is typically when we will go for the stormwater management. Obviously, we'll be dealing with the city Kissimmee all along, because we'll be dealing with maybe a decel lane on Ben John, working with them in the traffic lights. But they're thrilled to hear that we're going to be able to pull all that queuing traffic off onto our site, and it won't be an issue on the Den John anymore. Currently, in our process of the program verification, we're wrapping up the formal report with that. We've had our interviews. We've had actually our first kickoff with stakeholders. So we're and I've done the condition assessment on the existing buildings to remain. So we'll be wrapping up that report, and we'll be submitting that within a week. The long-term look at probably December 15th, we'll have the schematic design submittal in, and then we'll have a formal review on that. But currently, I just sent the current plans and site plans to Mark and our project manager, Dave Barkholtz, and we'll be setting up a meeting probably this end of this week, or maybe beginning sometime next week for the stakeholders. So it's early on in the project yet. The move-in date for this school was, I believe, 2020, I think, school year 2020.
Well, we'll have the first.
Was final completion.
It was the second phase.
Yeah, the first phase would be the big building with all the classrooms. That would be available before then, but getting the existing building torn down and all the parking lot and bus loops in, that all would be finalized.
And the phases are still being firmed up. We want to work around school ongoing operations as much as possible, so we're minimizing the impacts to the school.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, question.
It's actually not a question on Den John, but a question on Neptune. I know right when Mr. Clinch came on, we had a discussion, and I know we went out and researched, and we talked about, we have a lot of grass space out there. Is there any way to make just some huge loop out there to get some more traffic off of Neptune Road? Is that a possibility? And I didn't know if there's anything we could do. I know, and I think
moving that to off of the other road?
The bus loop, but not the car riding.
But that gets, doesn't that open up the current?
Yeah,
bus route?
for Neptune Middle School,
That will
so the
open
first,
the bus loop for
the-
cars.
the first beat
Gotcha.
was to modify the bus loop to get it to align with the traffic signal that will soon be going in, what we're told by the county. The next phase will be to build the new bus loop to the rear of the school. In order for that bus loop to be operational, the county also has to realign Ames Haven to take out that dangerous angle. Then the last condition will be to merge that existing bus loop at the front and the car loop so that we can have that additional stacking.
good.
And it will remove that entry, that very dangerous entry, just not too far from the bridge to the traffic signal. So all the vehicular movements will go to that traffic signal.
Good. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. All right, next update on the STEM high school. We continue to move very quickly on this project. So really, the update is broken down into two major areas. The first area is the first 125 students. We're continuing to review backup plans and look at what will make the most sense. We're also, we met with the county on the 3rd to discuss their 4-story building, continuing to work with the county. They have advised that it would not be ready until October, and that's pretty much what we thought would be the case. That's why we were looking at the backup plans. So it's good that we were doing that. The next phase is for the actual school, the 500-student station. We've completed the preliminary geotechnical evaluation and previously reported that we had some very good findings. And we have our site plan approval and process. That will go to DRC this week. So even with not having a designer on board yet, we are moving forward with every piece and part of this project that we can, so that when the designer does get on board, there'll be a little bit less on their plate so that they can concentrate on the project proper.
I'm sorry. Do we know we have 125 ninth graders that want to be here?
I will tell you that the reaction in our choice fair was phenomenal.
Okay, great.
Absolutely
No, that's great. I
phenomenal.
just want to make
And
sure.
we have not done any formal recruitment other than to invite everybody to the choice fair. But our goal now is to do targeted recruitment.
Okay.
And we have 12 different orientation nights. It'll be combined with International Baccalaureate and the Demonstration High School group to provide information to parents about both of those programs.
Awesome.
So very, very excited. Melanie Stavanovans, even though we don't have the principal yet, and her team have really taken ownership of this piece.
Don't talk about her, she's right back there.
Phenomenal. I didn't know she was even in the room, but I don't mind telling that she is doing a fabulous job really taking this vision and helping us to start to make it reality. And we've also had great partnership from Bridge. The engineers were at the choice fair, tremendous participation and a lot of positive excitement.
They want to teach here.
I know, and we're excited about it.
I got a question. The land, does the county own the land, or they deeded the land to us? How's that work?
They currently do own the land. We're working through the platting process now so that they can officially transfer the property to us.
Even if they can't, they charge, if we get a 100-year lease for $1 a year, I mean, whatever works.
Right, that's the plan, is a long-term lease.
Right, I mean, whatever works, I mean, they may have to do that at this site.
Right. And we're also working through the Phase 1 environmental. Legal counsel will tell us that's something we should always do anytime we acquire a piece of property.
Why just a ground lease? Why not just a flat over deed of the property?
I want it deeded. That's what we're pushing. That's why I don't want to start talking about lease.
That's in
I
Frank and
want it-
Andrew's hands.
I'm pushing for a deed. Thank you.
I would say I don't want a lease, I want it deeded to the school district.
You're where I'm at, that's why I didn't give you.
No, I would too. But I'm just looking at getting the project moved.
The only,
Originally, it
The
was
practical distinction
just the
is
front.
not-
I mean, that was the conversation, so I wouldn't back off that.
Okay.
We're talking about long-term lease.
the only
Okay,
way
so I hear you.
justify potentially.
Okay, tentative schedule, design RFQ is obviously out. The CM RFQ is also out. It went out yesterday.
That's right,
So the next big thing will be the design proposals coming in 2 days from now, so that our selection committee will be reviewing those over the Thanksgiving holiday, so that when we return, we'll be ready to do our design shortlisting. So I suspect those proposals will have a little bit of gravy stain on them. But we'll get through the process as quickly as we can, so that ultimately, we're looking to take this board recommendation to the board on December 12th. The morning of the 13th, actually the entire day of the 13th, will be a very busy day for that selected designer. We'll be working through a series of meetings to load them up with all the information they need to go forth over the Christmas holiday and produce their schematic design. Are there any questions?
Great work.
Sounds very great, very exciting.
Okay, our last item, housing for older person applications.
HOPA.
Our legal counsel
Just a quick
will
question
take us
before we
through
move
that.
on. You mentioned something earlier about the funding for this and looking at a different avenue. Is that a bigger conversation that we need to have, or?
It is probably a more extensive conversation after Frank and I have done our due diligence. We're still trying to work through the process with the Department of Education. But if not, we'll potentially look at some other options.
Will you just add that to our list to talk about?
Yes, sir.
We're on, okay.
Our last item, sir.
We
We're doing good on time
have,
today.
Indeed.
during the last 6 months or so since I got here, I have spent an extraordinary amount of time with planning, particularly on what's called HOPA, Housing for Older Persons.
So why are you looking at me?
No.
Well, you knew he wasn't going to look at me.
It's all right, you can look at me.
And Rhonda and Mark were great to work with the team on this because I came to it hearing a lot from developer lawyers about the process, et cetera. And the first thing we did was sat down and go through the actual HOPA agreement, and staff was very receptive. I recommended it, and they did it. It basically was, guys, let's stay in our lane of protecting the schools. If there's a paragraph in there that does not involve the schools, we don't need to worry about it. It shouldn't be in there. We don't need to get into things that involve the homeowners and the developer and the county, et cetera. Over time, it just, I think, grew to have some things in it that weren't related to us and didn't benefit us. So we stripped that out. So the time that the staff spends on these is enormous, and a few other things worked up, and that was, we would have a developer apply, right, and then not show up and come back in 10 months later and suddenly want to reactivate and be complaining that somehow they didn't get what they wanted, but they never gave us what they needed. So we went through a whole application, a checklist, this is what we need. And what I recommended the staff, and we started doing this in Orange, so I'll take responsibility for it. We were doing so many, what I call capacity enhancement agreements in Orange to get school people through development. We started charging a fee because the staff was just overwhelmed. So we looked at the massive amount of work done and said we thought 2,000 was reasonable. We would also set up, and Mark Runda, correct me if I'm wrong, that from the time somebody filed with the application with all the documents, their response and everything would be kicked back to them no later than 45 days. We think we can do it sooner, but we built ourselves 45.
60 days, correct?
Yeah. Once you had everything, we talked about 45 days that the staff could turn around to the developer. Yeah.
Yes.
I knew that number was all right, but that predicated on our communicating up front. Here's exactly what you have to give us, and if you give us that, the deeds and everything, we'll get it back. That solves, I think, any griping from a third party that somehow it's not being turned around, it's out there, and I think you all know time is money to a developer. So by saying, guys, you can plan on this, and we'll have an interim meeting with you if you want to have a meeting with us, we'll be able to streamline this and move it back out the back door, or tell them, you have a problem, and if you don't agree with us, you can appeal to the board, but here's why it doesn't work. but we've got this down pretty pat now, and I think we have enough developers now who have agreed to things to be able to stand and say, you know what, all the reasonable people have agreed, this works, et cetera, and we go forward from there. Now, what we would do at your next board meeting is bring back a formal adoption of, here's the fee, we will now start charging it to people, and we'll also build in one other thing. If you file and you don't give us everything, in 3 months, your application goes dead, and you got to pay another fee. But we're not going to be basically housing this stuff and sitting on it, because the staff's time is limited. They have resources that they can devote elsewhere. So I think, I've run this by some of the development lawyers I know, they're appreciative of our being attentive to, here are the issues, so we're trying, Tim, you had mentioned about working with trying to listen to what they raised as concerns. I think we sat down and said, okay, we can address these issues. Is it perfect? It's never perfect. There'll always be an issue, but we'll just, next time we hear an issue, we'll figure out how to work with everyone, fix it. But right now, every issue they've raised, and I've run by the 2,000, you know, some of them, that's fine, we get it, that's fine. There'll always be somebody who might gripe, but we're trying to explain that we're not there to just do development work, et cetera. So that's the overall concept.
Yeah, so this is for the deed restricted 55 hour?
Yes, yes.
It's not, there's not an automatic process that just says deed restrict, done?
No, they have to submit.
File for an exemption.
They have to actually go through a filing process.
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah. And then we have to work with the county, and everybody's got.
Well, is this is for information, it's coming for a board vote in the future, or?
Yes, we come to the board in the December meeting.
And my flavor board is, I'm fine with it as long as you can convince the board that the fee is a justifiable fee, which I'm sure what you just shared, I understand that. I definitely think having something in place so that our staff isn't overworked for something like this without due compensation is important. I have no problem with it as long as we make sure that it's truly a justifiable fee based upon the work that we're providing.
We can bring back to you, like, here are the average hours that are spent on these, et cetera, by staff, by me, et cetera, and what we're doing. Yeah, I think we're well under the fee.
I believe it.
But I think making the record is important.
I got a question about the fee. Is that fee, it's per application, but could the application be for 100 units in this count, or is it for each unit?
No, it's for the whole development. Yeah.
Good try.
Yeah.
No, I think that's more than fair. That's more than fair.
I think we'd have to get
It's
military
2 cents
barriers.
per unit. 2 cents per unit or 2,000 per application.
I was just thinking, helped us out.
That's why I'm asking the question.
I cannot, being it's 5 o'clock.
But I think
That's entirely
the key to the success of this, and Tim, you're
not going
is
anywhere.
that
We're not going anywhere.
Thank you, Frank.
you have to fit it. You can plan
Mr. Chair.
based
I know.
upon what we've told you.
Board, is there any other questions or comments? No? All right, so we'll adjourn this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Soto.
Yeah, we started getting rowdy over here.